Toretsk has been one of the sites of the heaviest fighting of the last 2 weeks. And while Russian forces seem to be making very limited progress, more and more information is piling up about the insane cost that these campaigns have taken on the Russian military. We're going to go over some of the evidence that this is becoming quickly another Kharkiv-level disaster for Putin. Let's get into it. Okay, so first off, this is a leaked video coming to us from Telegram of a Russian officer discussing the losses within his brigade. Now, bear in mind, guys, a typical Russian brigade is around 3,000 to 5,000 troops, right? So when we hear this guy's statement,
офицеров хватает в моей бригаде на 200% перерасход.
So when we hear this guy's official statement, you see that they've, one, overinflated the size of the brigade, with 200% of the personnel still officially listed. And we know that this is likely part of a scheme by the Russian military to not have to pay death benefits to soldiers who are killed. It may also simply be a logistical issue, as the casualties on the front line happen, but then the administrative state takes a long time to catch up, particularly when you're talking about an event like a death, something that has to be verified, documented, passed on to a administrative official who will then update the roles and rosters. And when big government isn't in any particular hurry to see that happen, well, it's very easy for political pressure to slow that process. For example, maybe there's too few administrative personnel, and the administrative personnel consider updating death lists to be their absolute last priority. So all of those could absolutely be explanations, but again, I think it's indicative of a Russian state that doesn't really care that much.
Ну, получается, 200% личного состава еще числится в штате. Ну и бригада у меня до хера людей потеряла, около 12 тысяч.
Right, so he's outing here in his brigade. Now, lost can mean killed or wounded, but still a brigade that has 6,000 officially killed or wounded. But the reality is nearly twice that. Again, likely he's alleging that this is part of a larger Russian conspiracy.
Официально 6 тысяч, а так 12 тысяч.
So, again, that's a one-off officer, right? You think, well, maybe this is just one officer having a bad day, but we're going to look at more leaked documents that seem to confirm what this guy has said. Now, if you're curious about how these operations are leading to such high casualties, we've taken a look at some of the fighting in and around Toretsk and New York. That's the Ukrainian town, not the U.S. city. That footage, though, because it's combat footage, it's drone footage fresh from the front lines, it appears on combatvetnews.com. It just dropped today for members. But if you become a specialist here, not only do you get to support this channel, keep me independent, keep me able to speak truth to power, and you don't make me beholden to big tech or a media company or even sponsors, that makes a huge difference to me. Specialist tier, you're going to get access twice a week, uncensored combat footage. But if you want to get the exclusive weekly Q&As, submit questions, get responses from me, that's for Lieutenant tier and above. You also get your name at the end of videos. And if you want the by name shoutouts, that's for the Colonel tier. So check us out at combatvetnews.com. Come join us, hang out, and get some of that uncensored combat footage that we just can't put on YouTube. Okay. So here's one other little anecdote. Again, this is pulled from Russian social media. VK, the Russian Facebook clone, it depicts June 7th. Russian citizen Nelly Kovleskaya posted a picture with her and her husband saying, "We're driving to the train station," implying that he was going to the train station in order to be deployed to Ukraine, June 7th. And then 2 days later, just 45 hours later, they said he had been killed in action. So I point this out because this is what you would expect from a unit that is having an absolutely buzzsaw level of casualties. And again, we've seen it. We've seen the drone footage of these soldiers just getting targeted, and they almost appear to be, when they talk about meat wave attacks or human wave, that's really what this feels like. As Russia runs out of armored vehicles, it has to become more and more disciplined with how it uses them. And what it's not running out of is new soldiers to join the fight. And so a lot of these soldiers are signing up. They're being sent on missions that they have really no chance of survival. Oftentimes it appears like their role on the battlefield is just to draw Ukrainian drones, draw Ukrainian fire, revealing the position for the professional class of Russian soldier to engage them with artillery or their own FPV drones. And so it's good the fact is that soldiers going to the front line, for context, when I was in Afghanistan, right, you would actually spend the first 2 weeks doing what was called left seat, right seat ride, where you would spend a week just as an observer with the unit currently fulfilling your role in country. Then after a week, you would become the lead element, and the outgoing unit would become the kind of observers and kind of coaches, right? So you would spend 2 weeks. Doesn't mean that soldiers weren't killed. I'm sure there is 1 or 2 cases in the 20 years of the global war on terror where someone was killed shortly after deploying. But man, it was pretty rare because of this left seat, right seat ride concept. And so when you see stories like this, it says that, one, these soldiers are not really being trained substantively. It said they're not really getting an orientation to the battlefield. They are literally being thrown into the meat grinder. And the result, of course, is leaked to us from Telegram. You can always count on Telegram to reveal something. This looks like an innocuous roster, certainly, and you could see the roster dates are simply depicting a series of deaths taking place what looks like within the last really 6 weeks. And you could see that that it is a list of missing persons in a military unit 34494. And when we see these 5-digit units instead of a true unit designation, it's oftentimes a key or a clue that this is this may be a Russian meat wave type unit. This may be a Russian like Reda or assault unit, right? Where casualties are expected to be so high that there's not really a reason to make it a story, a unit with a name. Literally, they identify it as the 109th Separate Rifle Regiment of the 8th Combined Arms Army, but if they're referring to it as simply a 5-digit coordinate. And you can see the regiment was formed right around the outset of the war during the mobilization, that first wave of mobilization. And then they lost 100% of their personnel, basically. Regiment's personnel were replenished with more citizens of the Russian Federation, including former prisoners. There's your revelation. And then, at the moment, the regiment's forces are taking part in assault operations in New York and Toretsk. Due to hostile activities, the unit suffers abnormally high losses in manpower. And that's saying something, because normal losses in this war are very high. This is 194 servicemen of the regiment who went missing during 3 weeks of assault operations, and does not include 200 and 300, which are classes of wounded soldiers. So that is also abnormally large. So again, you're seeing more and more hints popping up that while the Russian military is enjoying a certain level of success in places like Toretsk, right, and New York, which we could take a peek here, or down here, and you could see Russian forces really trying to push into Toretsk from the east and south. But it's coming at a tremendous, tremendous cost. And you can see Russia really wants to make this breakthrough happen. They're really working hard to do it. But you have to remember the problem with these sort of slow breakthroughs, and as you can see here, right, they're trying to kind of advance, but the Ukrainians are actually pushing them out increasingly. These Russian forces are somewhat looking like they might be at the end of their combat capacity. But the Russians, when you push this hard into an objective, look at imagine you're one of these Russians right here. What do you have, right? You have Ukrainians to your west, to your east, and to your north. In fact, this entire salient has Ukrainians to their west, east, and north. And this is not a sustainable fight for Russia. They can throw more men and material into what is almost certainly a bleeding wound or clearly a bleeding wound, or they can try to expand out the flanks and at least protect one of the flanks from Ukrainian counterattacks. And that's likely the plan. They may be trying to simply create this pincer movement and make it the Ukrainians who are in trouble. But that's a tall order. And even if they were to make that pincer movement, what would they gain for it? They'd sacrifice a ton of troops for what looks like some empty farm fields. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Huge thank you to the Colonel tier members of Combat Vet News, like Bill Collier, Robin Colburn, Giles Marroning, Eugenia Cuesta, and Chris Gorsuch and Fran Zacharias. Huge thanks. Check us out, combatvetnews.com. Link is in the description. And be sure to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one. Cheers.